Hello, this is Kuya Poetry, and you're listening to the Love and Other Metaphors podcast here on youtube.com/user/valor07. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram.com at Kuya Poetry. What's up, y'all? I am, once again, in one of my favorite places, my car, and I am driving around the edge of the Glendale area. I'm just coming from LA, and I'll be honest with you. This is what's happening. As per my previous podcast, how many? Maybe about 3-4 podcasts ago, when I had talked about I can't turn right here. What the heck? Oh, on red. I was like, what the heck? Anyway, um, but I'm going to Americana because I need to go to the bathroom. Americana has a really nice bathroom, and it's pretty urgent. It's not super urgent, but like, it's yeah. I just need a clean place. Anyway, also kind of figured I'd probably do some art stuff over there at the Americana. It is one of the great places that I like to kind of meditate on my art, do my devotions, and write new poetry. It's always kind of been my muse place, a place where I can get inspired a little better. Also brought my camera around, so I might do some of that as the sun goes down during this very lovely, is it Tuesday today? It's Tuesday. Very lovely Tuesday, not too many clouds, actually just kind of haze. And the sun is kind of going down. It's late in the afternoon. Well, it's late in the afternoon, so I'm going to get a little bit of that magic hour. So coming from LA because I'm coming from rehearsal, the tech guy for the Heartstorms performance that's going to be happening during the LA Get Down, day 4, I think it's day 4 of the LA Get Down, at the Greenway Court Theater, same place they have DPL, the Poetry Lounge, the historic largest open mic venue in America. So they're co-hosting the LA Get Down, and Heartstorms is the 4th night. I think it's the 4th night. If I'm wrong, it is one of the nights of performances centering on focusing the community and the what is it called? Festival. It's a festival, I think. Focusing the festival on hip hop and poetry, spoken word. So yeah, I'm really glad to be a part of it. I've mentioned it a couple times before. By the time you're hearing this podcast, I've already gone through it. Actually, it'll be about a week or so since I will have been part of the performance. Again, I'm the tech guy, but I actually do have one spoken word piece that's in the program, as well as a group piece that I am a part of. So I'm pretty excited about it. Got my family going. A lot of my friends also in and around the area, poetry friends I met at the mics, going to the festival as well too, and going to support that part of it. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. A little nervous. It's the first time I've actually been a part of a stage show for a very, 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 very long time. I'm really excited about that, actually. So that's a little bit about what's going on with me. Not too much else, but that is pretty much it. I personally am doing okay. Just been busy at work. Not too busy the last couple of weeks. Boss is on vacation, so I don't want to say taking it easy, but not as much. We got a lot of work done before she left, so like I'm just kind of taking it easy as the weeks go by and we have to ramp it up again. So really good. It's actually a really good beat. So got so much stuff done before all this rehearsal stuff done for Heartstorms had to be accomplished. So now, I can focus more on Heartstorms, not as much in terms of like work. Still working hard though. That's basically it. More or less wanted to talk today about I kind of wanted to talk today about an interruption because I don't know where this is going to go totally, but I will start with this. It is kind of interesting that I'm part of Heartstorms because I kind of allowed myself to be interrupted. In the beginning of the year, I'd been focusing on seeing like what kind of art I want to be part of this year. I was thinking about writing my own show, kind of a one man show. Been more focused on the open mic at Montebello. If you guys don't know, once again, I host an open mic at the Daily Brew open mic once a month. Well, actually, twice a month. I host the one on Wednesdays, the first Wednesday of every month, at 8 o'clock at the Daily Brew Coffee Bar. We also have another mic. I don't host that one, but we do have another mic on Friday, and the third Friday of every month. That one's the big open mic. The big thriller one. I do the workshop one, the one where kind of people go in and kind of get to know a little bit more about their work. I give encouragement. I give kind of a workshop feel of helping them develop their craft, both as an artist and specifically to their piece. So I've been enjoying it. I've been wanting to focus a little bit more on the mic. I've been wanting to, once again, write my own show, developing content such as this podcast as well too, and I wanted to see where the year would go. So I had a lot of plans, but how does the word of God say? Many are plans in the man's heart, but the Lord directs his steps. And that's kind of what happened with me. I was planning all this stuff out, and then kind of God put it in my heart. It's like, okay, hey, like because I was asking, I was just like, I was kind of like meditating on it and praying about it. I'm like, God, well, how do you want me to do this? And I had all this stuff planned out. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do it about my book so I can sell my book at the same time. I had a lot of stuff going on in terms of planning, in terms of what I wanted to do. And out of nowhere, I'm part of this group chat for the former members of our mic, which is another open mic in the heart of downtown LA I used to go to. And one of my mentors, my poetry mentor, Ariana Bosco, Lady B, she was asking for tech guys. Like, oh, I need someone to do tech. I need someone to do like PowerPoint and stuff like that for the 20th. This was back in March. So I was just like, oh, I could do that. Like, it was the 20th in March is actually a Tuesday. So I thought, okay, that's going to be for DPL, the Poetry Lounge, because she said it was in the same venue. I was like, oh, that's great. I can do that. I have the next couple of weeks all planned out. I can probably do that in terms of like, manipulating my schedule. I'm the manager, so I make the schedule. So it was easy for me. So I told her, it's like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll totally do it, Lady B. Count me in. And she's like, okay, great. I'll give you more of the details. And the more I'm reading it, the more I'm like, wait a minute. These rehearsals go all the way until April. And it was my fault. I thought it was March 20, but it turns out it was 420, not 320. So 420 would be April 20. I was like, oh, I read that number wrong. So I actually committed to 8 to 10 weeks of rehearsals. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But a part of me, like a really big part of me, after like kind of like thinking, meditate, praying about it as well too, I felt like God was just saying, no, I need you to do this first. I was like, you know what, you're right. I couldn't figure out my own thing. I felt uneasy about it. But then like when this thing came up, when Lady B's like, hey, I need you over there, I was like, you know what, I'll do it. I will do it. And so I did. Committed, and again, been practicing like twice a week, for the most part, going to rehearsals. I was like, for me it was a very interesting interruption, because I haven't practiced for something like this in a long time. I never practiced for a show, and I was so just like, I don't know, like this is very interesting to me, and I am definitely around so much talent, and so many other people that I'm learning so much about in terms of performance, in terms of stage etiquette, in terms of kind of delivery on stage, and knowing your space in terms of live performance as well too, that I was just like, you know what, Lord, I needed this. Like, you know what, Lord, I needed to learn this. Like God's really faithful in terms of that stuff, and all the more He was faithful in this. He was faithful in just like saying, here, like you wanted to perform, you had a heart to be part of a show. You thought it was going to be your own, but actually no, it's not. It's actually going to be a show where you get to do with other people, and you get to learn again. And I just saw that I saw that opportunity. I didn't see it at first. God saw it, and then when I kind of got interrupted and went into it, I was just like, you know what, I'll do it. Why not? And like, come to think of it, a lot of where God has led me has been interruption. In terms of my ministry, in terms of how I became a youth pastor, how I just got into youth ministry in the very beginning. A part of it, it was like, yeah, it was my passion. It was what I wanted to do. Um, as I developed, but there was a lot of interruptions that prompted me to get into it. I don't know if I ever told this story. This story is very interesting. I the reason I'm a youth pastor in my church right now was kind of by accident. It was an interruption again. I was in between churches. I was going through some stuff with the church that I was with at the time, and I knew God was kind of like leading me to another congregation. I mean, there's no animosity at the church I was at. It's just like I just didn't feel like I was there and I was committed and I was doing stuff within ministry, but then I just felt like there's something that I'm not getting. There's something I'm not missing. That I'm missing. And it wasn't like, because a lot of people was like, you're just church hopping. It's like, not really. I just felt like my time there was done, and I felt like God was calling me somewhere else. But during those times, it gets kind of, you get flustered, you get kind of lonely, you get kind of like, I don't know what's supposed to happen, and you're almost waiting for an interruption. So at this time, when I was at my previous church, and this church was in like Glendale, every now and then my parents, they were helping a church locally in my hometown in Covina, called Life Christian Fellowship. And I'd help every now and then when I was kind of like praying about stuff and I didn't have any church to go to on Sunday and wanted to go to church. My parents would ask, like, hey, can you help with drums? Because they didn't have a drummer at the time. And if you know anything about my family, we're kind of deep seated in terms of the whole church worship thing. So helping with drums, helping with guitar, helping with backup and singing, like basically doing kind of the contemporary church, like contemporary Christian church worship. That was kind of my thing for my family while we were growing up. So there was another moment where I can help again. I was like, okay, cool, I'll help again. So that would happen every now and then. Then it got to a point where, yeah, I didn't have a church at all, so I'd help a little bit more, but not really. I'd still kind of go back to my other church that I was a part of, but yeah, but I was in transition. I didn't know where I was gonna be at, but I did know that something was happening. My parents, around the time of, actually around this time, on March, April, God has a weird way of like using like the March, April season, the spring season, for me to do new stuff, because that's usually what happens. Like around March, April, God just like, hey, got a job for you. And I was like, okay. And then I get thrown and thrusted into something new. Okay, so all that being said, I'm here. I'm here I'm here within my church right now. My parents basically say, okay, hey, so the youth at our church they're practicing for this big concert thing. I was like, okay, like, so what? They're like, well, we've taught them everything that we can. And my parents are like, they're skilled musicians, but in terms of like musicality, in terms of actual like fundamentals of like music, they're very novice, and it's okay for them, like, because the way that they do music, when you do worship, it's a little different when you're just kind of doing like kind of casual, not casual, but just kind of like small room, mid-size church worship. What the youth are trying to do is take kind of that beginner level of musicality and try to turn it into an actual performance. So that's why my parents asked me, can you help them? I was like, yeah, sure. But I had all these caveats, which was really funny. I had just like, okay, I'm gonna help, but this doesn't make me part of the church. I'm only helping for the music. I am not part of the worship team. And I'm not there to get involved in the youth at all. They have a leader. They have a youth pastor. They have a pastor, a pastora. Like, they have all that stuff already. I'm not there to get involved. And my parents was just, yeah, no, we agreed. They talked to the pastor. The pastor also agreed. My pastor now, Pastor Sonner, and they're just like, yeah, he can help. That's fine. So I had all these caveats, and then they'd meet on Saturdays to practice the worship set. And yeah, the first time we actually practiced, 30 minutes into the practice, I'm giving them like, okay, like I want to assess, I want to see what's going on. Where are they musically in terms of talent, in terms of singing. And then I started giving them a little bit of advice about their music, about projection, about playing music, about transitions, about hand signals, and just like kind of the basics in terms of worship, um, and what to expect in a worship service as opposed to a concert. 30 minutes into it, 30 minutes. I mean, I only got maybe 2 or 3 things that I talked to them about, and then they just went, wow, like in terms of like asking me questions about youth, asking me questions about music, like thanking me. I was like, no, yeah, I mean, you asked for help, I'm here to help. And they're just, it's like, oh, could you help in youth? Can you help with this? I was like, wait, whoa, wait, hey, I'm just here to just help you with music. And they're just like, yeah, but we know that you're a youth, like, a youth minister, and you do all this, and we really need help. Come to find out, like, just to give you a little caveat or background into why they're asking for this. I had not known at the time, but their recent their youth pastor and wife, and the pastora, basically, they had stepped down. They had moved, I think, to Rancho or something, so they didn't really have a leader. I had hints about it, but I didn't know, just like, oh wow, he just like straight up and left. Oh, okay. And it's not a necessarily bad thing. They had a kid and they wanted to raise their family, so the church had accepted it. But the thing is, they kind of left the youth without a leader at the time. So that's coming. This is where it's coming from. They're all saying, "Hey, we can use a leader. We can do this." And I started doing even more caveats. I was like, "Okay, look, I could do it, but we have to meet on Fridays, because if you say you meet on Fridays, you have to do this, and you can't meet every other week. You have to commit to meeting every week, because you have to have a commitment if you really want like your ministry to grow. You got to do that." And it's like, I'll be committed to teaching if you want. Like, I can teach. Oh wow. No. No, I will ignore. Sorry, that's not an important one. I didn't know I was gonna do that. I muted my car. But anyway, it was an incoming call. God was calling me. No, hey, God was calling me, and I didn't know it. I was all these caveats. No, that's funny. And there's like all these caveats I don't want to end. It's like incoming call. I'm like, yep, God was calling me at the time. Yeah, but it was funny. Like, I kept doing this. I kept like, no, I don't want to be interrupted. I'm not going to do anything. But God was interrupting me at this point. And the youth were talking about the youth camp that they were having. It's like, oh, this concert was all about the youth camp, and we're trying to save money for the youth camp. And this concert is, like to get people to buy tickets and stuff like that, so we can, save, like, raise money. I was like, oh, it's a fundraiser. So they're just like, oh, and can you go to youth camp? I was like, huh? Like, you don't even know me. This is the interesting thing too. This is kind of a tangent from my story of interruptions, but I told them, it's like, you don't even know me. You don't even know like anything about me. You don't just like, with, like, in a way they were all saying, it's like, no, but we do know you. We do know your heart for ministry and all this other stuff, and we see this as an opportunity. It's so funny that a lot of times interruptions are, and I feel like this for the interruption I'm having right now with Heartstorms and this show, is sometimes interruptions is God saying you're ready. And ooh, I felt the spirit moment. Oh, interruptions. Sometimes interruptions are God's way of saying, this is your moment. You're ready for this moment now. And with that point, I was just like, because if you knew what I was going through back in the past, I was looking for my ministry again. This is during the time, and maybe I'll talk about this one day, again, but this is the time where I was really learning more about my craft, about my art. This is the time I was becoming a poet, an artist. I was writing more. I was developing my book. I was doing all this other stuff. And like, I didn't know where God was leading me. All the more, I didn't know if God was ever going to bring me back into like my heart for ministry, my heart for being a part of the church and helping out in the church. I didn't know. And there was a point in my life where I just said, hey, God, you're going to bring me back. You're going to bring me back to that ministry. You're going to bring me back to being a youth minister when you're ready for me to be there. But until then, I submitted to the process of becoming an artist, a poet. And I'm still developing, but I felt like that was a time where God had to interrupt me and say, yo, Paul, like, here's an incoming call. And he interrupted me. And I didn't know then, and I don't have too much time to actually talk about it today, but that's when God basically said, hey, you know what, like, this is your time. You're ready to go back. You're ready to go back into ministry. I feel like even right now in this time, going into Heartstorms, God's basically saying, hey, it's time for you to perform again. It's time for you to go back. It's time for you to know that you've made it to another level of performance that that I didn't know. I didn't know I was ready for a stage like that. I didn't know I was ready to produce like that. If you heard my other podcast, which I remember putting in on YouTube, that it was a gong show. It really was. It was a mess, but it was a beautiful mess because we got to create a music video, and with that, it was another interruption. It was my friend of mine, the director Sammy Villanueva, calling me and basically saying, "Hey KP, I need help. I need to produce this music video." And at first, like, I even felt, I was like, I don't know how to produce. Like, I'm not a producer. I've never really done that. But there was just something in me where God says, like, no, you're ready. Like, you can help. Like, what she's asking for, you can actually do. And long story short, with that one, we ended up getting the venue. We ended up getting costuming. We ended up getting all this other stuff that, like, for me personally, and I'm saying this in a proud way, but for me personally, I didn't know that I could help in that regard. I didn't know I could produce. I mean, you hear it all the time in movies and TV, producer the so and so, and I was like, I helped produce a music video. That's so weird for me to say, but at the same time, it's not really me. It's really God saying, "Hey, it's time for you to become a producer." I was like, "Oh, okay." It's like, "Hey, it's time for you to become a stage actor." And albeit I'm not on stage for very much, I do a spoken word piece, and I shoot from the scaffolding, basically, like, while I'm doing all the tech stuff in the background. So I'm not necessarily even on stage during the performance part, but I'm performing, and God's basically saying, you are ready. A lot of times, especially as artists, we have to be ready for interruption. We have to continue to develop ourselves individually, going from show to show to show, but be wary. We have to be wary that interruptions will come, and these interruptions are God's way of saying, when we can't see it, by the way, when we can't see our development actually happening, because we're here learning, we're here gaining the knowledge that we'll need, we're here developing skills, we're here on the inside, first person view, we're not looking third person perspective. We need God to tell us, you're ready. So I encourage you, those who are listening, be wary of interruption. Be wary of God interrupting your process, and basically saying it's time for you to pause your process and get ready for performance, because you're ready. You've obtained to this level. You've tamed to this level, and you don't see it because you're first person. I don't see it. I didn't see the fact that I was ready for this. I was ready to be up on a stage. And yeah, again, this is not even my show, so I'm not saying that, like, I'm ready for, like, to be, like, a principal actor. Like, I'm not ready for anything like that. I'm not ready. I may not be ready necessarily, or I don't think, for, like, my own show. But God, at least in this point, he said, you're ready for a stage show. He said, you're ready to produce. When that time came with my youth, he said, you're ready to go back into youth ministry. And all the more, the blessing within that, he also said, you're ready to become not just a youth minister, you're going to be pastor. You're going to be regarded as a pastor, when before you kept seeing yourself as helping out. I'm only helping out. But it was in that regard, God told me, no, you are ready to pastor these young men and women into my knowledge and into following me. I didn't know that I was ready for that, but God had to interrupt me. God had to say that you were ready when you don't even see yourself ready. You were ready. If you think about it, I don't mean to preach necessarily, but I do mean to preach. I'm a pastor, I preach. But he's done it so many times before. He's done it in the Word. He's done it with people who didn't know. He's done it with people like David. It's like, hey, you didn't know that the bear and the lion trained you to become a warrior, and that in turn trained you to become king. You didn't know that like the years under slavery, but under the second to rulership of a house in Egypt would prepare Joseph to become the second to Pharaoh. Interruptions show us, even interruptions that we deny. A whale had to remind Jonah that he was ready for Nineveh, and to tell the people that they needed to turn back to God. I mean, I can go on and on in terms of preaching all this, but interruptions. I thank God for interruptions. I thank God even right now for interrupting my life in so many ways, because if he didn't interrupt my life, I wouldn't be a poet. If he didn't interrupt my life, I wouldn't be a writer. If he didn't interrupt my life, I wouldn't have written a book. And I thank God for all the interruptions that he's had in my life, because without him interrupting my life, I wouldn't have the life I had now. And there's so many other things in my life that need to change, that I'm learning from. There's so many things that I just there's so many things, but how can I ignore the fact that these interruptions led me to where I am? It's all because I learned to listen to God interrupting my life. So I pray for you guys that you learn how to be interrupted. Learn how to go against the flow. Learn how to break the mold, to break the mold, or at least learn how to go with the flow when the mold is broken. When you know that you're too big for the shell that you're in. Learn how to be interrupted. I had to learn. I'm still learning. And in those times in between, when you're not interrupted, when God gives you that long stretch of highway where all you need to do is develop and learn and be taught and become. When he gives you that long stretch of highway, all you get to do is just cruise for a while. Number one, definitely take it all in. Learn to develop, because sooner or later your exit's going to come and you're going to need to be interrupted. Sooner or later. But that's me. That's Kuya Paul. And once again, this is the Love and Other Metaphors podcast. You can find it on youtube.com/user/Valor07. You can also find me Facebook and Instagram.com at Kuya Paul Poetry. Now, with this podcast, I do want to make an announcement. I'll probably make an announcement also within the log lines of this podcast. But I am going to be taking a month off. I'm going to be redeveloping the podcast, maybe even rebranding it as well too. But I do want to thank all my faithful listeners who have been listening to the podcast. I really do appreciate it. I hope it's blessing you. I definitely thank you for the support. But mostly what I really want to see is that people that listen to the podcast are encouraged, even by the small random ramblings that I have and tangents that I have, are encouraged to create for themselves. But once again, I'm going to be taking a break, 1 month off. You're going to hear me once again 1 month after this podcast. I will probably put in like small little tidbits of little things that I've been working on. So you'll still have content from me, KP. Also going to be working on developing my own other content, maybe more poetry, videos as well too, for you guys to enjoy and to be encouraged from. But I do need to take some time to rebrand. So this will be the end of season 1 of Love and Other Metaphors podcast. I will see you guys in season 2. Whether or not this podcast is going to stay the same in terms of name, I don't know. But I will see you guys in season 2 of my podcast. Take care. God bless. This is my metaphor.